This is Saturday Morning Mysteries.
And we're your hosts, Alexis and Grace.
Hello, party people, and welcome back to another Saturday Morning Mysteries bonus content time. We are here with another Toon Tangent, which is just our excuse to talk about cartoons that we feel like talking about. And today we're going to be talking about a favorite cartoon. Basically, we've decided we're going to do kind of like a little mini series within our Toon Tangents in which we talk about kind of more recently released, what we consider kind of like adult animated shows. So yeah, maybe things that are just straight up for adults with the humor, you know, the 11 o'clock on Adult Swim, even just on Adult Swim, Comedy Central, like that type of shit. Because we love cartoons in all shapes and forms and sizes.
Yeah, so for all age ranges.
Exactly. So Alexis is going to start us off today. I don't know which one she's going to talk about at all, but with one of I assume her favorites, at least in a top 10-ish zone of favorites. I'll just pass it to you to tell me about it.
So I'll just add to that brief introduction. First off, as Grace said, maybe like a top 10 sort of scenario. It was really hard to make a list of, you know, what I consider to be my favorite recent ones. And also when we say recent, we just mean like newer than the shows that we cover on our main episodes. So not necessarily something that's come out in the last like 2 or 5 years. Coincidentally, some of the shows I'll be talking about in the series did come out within the last 2 or 5 years, but there's no like real time limit on, you know, how new or how old the shows that we're going to talk about in this Toon Tangent series are. Just that they're not like the older classic animated tales that we're talking about in our main episodes. And I'll also say, if you're just, you know, kind of stumbling upon our videos for the first time today, and you've not heard any of our main episodes or any of our other bonus content, go ahead. And if you like what we have to say, subscribe and comment and like this video. And then you'll also get notified of other videos of ours. Or if you're listening on a podcast platform, leave a review, follow us there, and catch up on our whole content library. We've got quite a few weeks worth of content that we've put up, and actually a couple months now worth. And so we're just adding to the table now with this nice little arc of our favorite adult animated shows. And so I will say, when Grace and I decided to do this little episode arc as well, we were like, there's going to be a high chance that we have crossover between our lists because we have very similar like taste and interest in like TV and particularly in adult animated shows. So I tried to pick some shows that I don't think Grace has watched that I still consider to be some of my favorites. And I will also add the caveat that, you know, if you go through our library or if you've been sticking with us for a while, you know that we do Toon Tangents on other adult animated shows. And those typically would like be on our list, I'd say, like Futurama or Bob's Burgers would definitely fall on this list for both of us. But we've dedicated like full episodes, and we'll do future episodes probably about those shows specifically. So we're going to like talk about shows that we probably wouldn't cover on their own here today. So getting all of that out of the way. Yeah, just like kind of so people know like the ground rules of what we're doing for these next, like, I guess it'll be 6 or so episodes of Toon Tangents. So the first episode today's show episode, the first show I'm going to talk about today. It's actually a quite newer show that's only about 2 seasons in. And this show, and correct me, Grace, if you have seen it, but I think it'll be new to you.
What is it?
It's called Harley Quinn.
I want to watch it so badly.
So good. It is so good. Okay. So, and I'll preface it too. I've not seen it yet though. Oh my God. I will preface it as well. I'm a huge comic book nerd. If you're familiar with this podcast, that's no secret. If you're new to the podcast, hello, I'm a huge comic book nerd, both Marvel and DC, Image, everything in between. I love comics. So for me, naturally, this show about a DC comic book character has to be somewhere near the top of my list. But I will say that even if you are not a big fan of the comic books, maybe you've only seen like some of the recent DC movies where Harley Quinn has popped up, you might like it. And even if you've not seen the movies, I think, you know, if you're totally new to the DC universe, you would still enjoy this show.
I will say that
yeah.
like I fall into that latter category of like, I don't know anything about comic books when it comes to like, I mean, except from DC, but like Marvel movies, I've seen like 3 of that like world, and like I don't know, I just like don't know it at all. But this show looks so fucking good. Yeah, I've seen previews for. Oh my god, I'm just talk about it. Just
it is.
Go ahead.
So it's
the
so
cast
amazing.
Seems amazing.
The cast. Okay, and real quick, I've got to give a plug. We just recorded another episode where I plugged one of our biggest fans, my cousin Evan. He is the one who introduced me to this show.
Good job, Evan.
Shout out, good job, Evan. And at the end, I'll give another shout out to him about why this is one of my favorite shows. But let me talk about the show itself for a quick minute. So if you're not familiar with the character Harley Quinn, she is a villain who appears in the DC Comics universe, or the DC Comics in general, and the DC film universe, mainly in Batman comics, but she eventually kind of spun off into her own character. She first appeared actually in a Batman animated series. I can't remember which one, but it came out in 1992. So her first appearance was on TV in a cartoon, not actually in a comic. But the next year they started putting her in the comics. Yeah. Okay. And her background as a character is that she actually started off just a normal human being for the most part. Like she actually is kind of a genius. She's a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
This is how she starts off.
Yeah, so this is before she becomes a villain. So yeah, she actually is a star gymnast, an athlete, and a genius, very intelligent psychiatrist,
psychotherapist, or something?
Yeah, I think it's one of those. And she is hired by Arkham Asylum, who I've name dropped in some of our Darkwing Duck episodes, at least comparing some
so she's like
parts
a
of DW.
Psychologist?
She is, yeah. So she gets hired by Arkham.
Psychologist.
Not forensics, no. It's like after she like psychoanalyzes criminals after the fact to try to reform them, or just to like, understand why they did what they did, but not in the forensic sense, more so in like the medical sort of sense. Yeah. And her name, I should say, as a normal human, is Harleen Quinzel. So Dr. Harleen Quinzel, with the history as like just this amazing gymnast and athlete, she is assigned to work with the Joker, famous villain in the Batman universe. I don't think I have to tell too many people what he's
even
about.
I know.
Okay, cool.
That's the standard.
If you don't know much about the Joker, drop it in the comments and maybe I'll like respond to your comment answering your questions about him. Today we're talking about Harley though. So she's assigned to the Joker, and through his manipulation and whatnot, she actually kind of falls in love with him. She becomes his sidekick. Well, let me back up. She falls in love with him, and he convinces her to actually jump into a vat of acid to prove, or like chemicals to prove her love for him. And in doing so, it kind of transforms her somewhat like it did for the Joker when the same thing essentially happened to him. Again, drop it in the comments if you're not familiar with this story. I'll explain it later. So it essentially, we'll get to it later. So the chemicals essentially cause Harleen Quinzel to really like scatter her brain. She becomes violent and erratic and starts to take on a lot of traits that are similar to the Joker. And she becomes like his crime fighting sidekick. And then, falls further in love with him. They become a couple, a criminal crime causing couple. Yeah. And like I said before, they're mostly seen as foes to Batman. So they are causing havoc throughout the city of Gotham. And now this show that I am here to obsess over today, it takes that fictional that character background of this crazed Harley Quinn, which is the name she assumes after, jumping into that vat of chemicals. She's like, okay, I'm no longer Harleen Quinzel. Now I'm Harley Quinn, AKA Harlequin, like not like a clown. It's kind of like a clown, whatever.
Yeah,
but Joker's the clown, Harleen Quinzel is the Harlequin. So it's a cute duo. And she kind of dresses like one too. She uses like a big, an oversized hammer, and wears like the like the diamond
almost
kind
like
of
a like medieval clown is what I think
yeah,
of a little
yeah.
bit. Like when I hear the word Harlequin versus like
yeah.
when we say modern day clown, it's not quite that.
Yeah, they're definitely different. So yeah, that's like kind of the physical like costume design that they use for her. But this show, the reason I love it is because it essentially takes like all of the action and the adventure and the like exploits of the superhero fictional world and essentially like turns them into a sitcom, which is so funny. So this show, essentially, it's an animated superhero black comedy based on all of these DC comic characters, not just Harley Quinn, not just the Joker, not just Batman. It shows a whole host of characters from the comics and the movies and the TV shows. And it first premiered on HBO Max in 2019. So again, pretty new. It's only in its second season, but the third season is supposed to come out next year. Ooh. It was supposed to originally come out this year, but there's been no news on when it will be released. So I think people are like just saying, okay, we'll expect for a 2023 release. And I am like anxiously waiting. So what is the show about, like in particular? So it talks about Harley actually trying to position herself as a crime leader in Gotham after she actually breaks up with the Joker. So she realizes after all of these years of working with him that he actually is just very manipulative. He was really just using her. Yeah, and it's an extremely toxic and abusive relationship, which, side note, so many fans glorify the Joker and Harley's relationship.
And it's about that.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about it at the end. It's super fucked up. Like it is not, it's the most toxic relationship probably like ever depicted. Yeah. In like a comic book or an animation. It's very, very bad. And unfortunately, it takes her a few too many years to realize this. So she essentially emancipates herself, which is funny because if you've been watching the DC movies, then it's similar to the kind of the character arc that they're taking for her in those movies as well.
Good. I'm glad that like in general, the like lore and story around her is like, it's 2022 and everyone's realized like this relationship should not be glorified. It's fucked up. Yeah. Even again, as not a person who knows anything about the comic books and comic book universe, know
this even. Yeah, exactly. And it's because the Joker is like literally certifiably insane. So there's like no way that any relationship of his could be healthy. And then Harley Quinn is also like pretty fucked up too. So it just doesn't work. Great. But anyway, so in addition to the show, being about her trying to like find her independence, she also is like, well, if I'm going to take over the crime world of Gotham, then I've got to have a crew. So the show is also about her like bringing together this like ragtag team of Misfits supervillains that are like pulled from the DC comics.
Wait, I love that.
Some of which are like bigger-ish kind of names, like Clayface, for example, is one of them who's still, he's a pretty big villain, but like, he's not like Lex Luthor or like Darkseid or any of these like big ones who also all appear in the show, just not as like main characters. So yeah, she's like picking this Misfits crew of supervillains from around Gotham, creating her own crime-causing crew, and also like, so it's about really this, it's truly like an underdog story, like when you frame it that way. And it makes it even more of like it gives it even more of that sitcom-y vibe. Because a lot of the show is about this misfit crew trying to prove themselves to the Legion of Doom, which is like the big bad, like super villain entity of the DC comics. And just the shenanigans that they get into on their way to do this are so funny. Like I said, since it's a sitcom, it's really humanizing these horribly, terribly evil characters. Like, I don't know, something about watching a group of like the Penguin and like Two-Face and Bane at a bat mitzvah is just hilarious to me. Yeah, it's like that kind of humor. And so I guess I'll just, if I could give like 3 reasons why I really love the show, besides the fact that I just obviously like, I really like these comics and I like the way that they tie in all of these different comic book characters. I would definitely say it's the humor, the character development, and the overall storytelling. So I'll go in reverse for that. So first with the storytelling, it's not really like episodic, like each episode lives in its own world. It tells a larger story. Like the 2 seasons are connected in a story, and each season in its own, like each episode builds on the last to paint a larger picture of this adventure or the misadventures of Harley Quinn. And in doing that, it's interesting because, like I said, they're putting these supervillains or these evil characters in humanized, like more sitcom-y form. So you actually you kind of get connected to these very bad characters. Yeah.
I love that, like morally gray type of thing.
Very morally gray.
They've killed someone, but he got his nephew a really good present at his bar mitzvah.
For example, one of the main characters in the show is Poison Ivy, aka Pamela Isley. She is Harley's best friend. And she considers herself a bit of an eco-terrorist. So, one evening, her and Harley decide to hang out, and their way of hanging out is by literally dumping executives of like some large oil or energy company into a polluted, like toxic waste dump that they created. And they're just like sitting on these docks chatting, having like a nice girl on girl, like one-to-one convo while like Ivy's like using vines to dump. Yeah. And they're just like having such a good time. So it's like that kind of stuff where they're doing these horrible things, but like in sitcom-y fashion, which makes black comedy so hilarious. And so then the second reason I said was the character development, which goes right along with the storytelling. You really see these very kind of lost misfit characters all come together as a family, and they have moments where there are fractures. People don't like the way that Harley is trying to lead this misfit crew, but at the end of the day, they always come back to one another, which I think it's very wholesome for a group of, again, super villains.
They have feelings too, okay?
Yeah, they do. And they express them greatly. And then the last reason I'll give real quick is the humor. So I've said it many times. It's very sitcom-y type of humor where you just see this group of villains sitting on a couch, kind of plotting their next scheme. And a lot of the humor is actually very like conversation based. So like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of slapstick stuff that happens in that show too, because it's based on a comic book. So
it has to, yep.
Weird shit abounds. But the gist of the humor, like sometimes you have to really listen because it's just like that fast paced, like dialogue, them just like shooting the shit back with one another. And also like a lot of the stuff that's going on in like the background is also just very funny. Like they're having a calm, casual conversation while literally Gotham is crumbling behind them and they're just chatting, or like parademons are flying everywhere behind them while they're just hanging out, talking, like ducking these robotic demons as they fly overhead, and then like continuing their conversation, someone's planning a wedding as parademons are like flying through the chapel. And the wedding planner gets carried away and she like calls the bride like, so I was thinking we could do flowers this way, and you like see her in the air being carried away by demons. So it's like the people in Gotham are so used to just this absolute chaos all of the time, and it is so funny the way that they turn like these comic book stories into a sitcom, an animated sitcom. And so I guess I'll just wrap it up by saying, the show is hilarious, but really like it just has a special place in my heart because, as I said, my dear cousin Evan, he introduced me to the show. And so now every time that I watch it, I just think back to the very first time that he showed it to me. Me and my brother Aaron, we actually took a little road trip down to visit Evan and his beautiful wife Christina, also a fan of the podcast, shouting out both of them now. Hi. And we just stayed up late one night chilling at their apartment and just like kept Harley Quinn rolling because Evan hyped it up to me that day as we were like touring around their area. And he was like, oh yeah, we should totally go back and check that out. And we watched it and we were just lolling the whole time, just kicked back, chilling. And so I just always think back to how dope of a weekend that was. And yeah, it's a great show. If you have checked it out, maybe drop a comment on why you love the show and how excited you are for season 3. If you've not checked it out before, I highly recommend. It's on HBO Max. Harley Quinn. I'm sure from the title of this video, you will figure out how to spell that. This video and or podcast episode, you will figure out how to spell that if you don't know already. Highly recommend it. Hilarious show. Very, very graphic, I will also say, for an animated show. But ultimately a sitcom, misfit, underground story, and also romance, a love story as well, too. But I will let the viewers watch to see that portion. I won't go into that. It's very, very good. So that's definitely one of my favorite recent shows. Adult animated or otherwise, I think, to come out. Yeah, I need to up it on get my shit together and watch game, because it's been on my list for a while. I've seen a lot of stuff on the interwebs about it. So this just convinced me even more. Maybe we'll have a follow-up of my reactions. Yeah. I mean, hey, there's a lot of crime to cover there in that show as well. So who knows? I started this video by saying that we probably won't do like full, like longer episodes on each of these shows that we cover in our favorite adult animated shows, but maybe we'll break our own rules and end up talking about Harley Quinn. There are no rules here, as we've said many a time. So bear with us.
That's exciting. Yeah, I'll have to. I'll up it on the list. I'll bump it up.
Yeah, it's good. I think each season has like maybe 12 or 13 episodes, and they're like 20 something minutes long. So
easy. Easy binge.
Or maybe just like check out a few of them, see if you like it. So some episodes I'm definitely like cheesing and geeking the entire way through. And then other episodes, it's like there are moments that are certainly a lot funnier than others. But it's actually super satirical too. And I think you would like it. I think you'd like it for sure. Yeah.
All right. I'll check it out. I'll report back. Thanks for the profile, and stay tuned to hear more of our faves on more Toon Tangents. Like, subscribe, review, share a friend, etc., etc. And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Saturday Morning Mysteries.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share, rate, review, leave us a like, and drop a comment. We post episodes every Saturday and bonus Toon Tangents whenever we feel like it. So please subscribe so you don't miss the shenanigans.
And if you want to follow us on YouTube, click the bell under the YouTube subscribe button to receive notifications when new videos are posted.
And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, we have no idea what you're listening to us on, so just hit the big subscribe button on whatever app you're using. We believe in you.
Give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at SatmornMist, all the abreves, and let us know if you have any episode or show requests by emailing SaturdayMorningMysteries@gmail.com.
Thanks to Jenna Kendall for the logo design, and to Ava Sakiki for the music used during this week's episode.
See y'all groovy kids next week on Saturday Morning Mysteries.